Good afternoon. What what a great morning, right? Packed with just great information. Really excellent speakers. Um, we learned about human behavior. We also learned a little bit about fire and life safety in metros and railways. Learned about risk management, both with Vision 2030, tourism, looking at that, but also crowd management. And the one that we cannot miss is EV and battery safety. It's just about in every conference. So what is the common denominator, right? What is the common thread on all we heard this morning? Codes and standards, right? But not only codes and standards that are technically accurate, right? They are current and updated, but codes and standards that are practical tools, and this is important, practical tools that guide everything we do, whether you're an installer, a contractor, a consultant, an engineer, you're an emergency responder. We all shared one common goal. We all have to deliver. What is that? Keeping people and property safe. This is exactly what we're going to dive into this panel session, which I'm going to take 30 seconds to call our panelists, if they can come over. Please. So 4 expert panelists experienced, 4 expert voices. We have Sahid Aher. He is the International Business Development Manager. He is with NFPA. Actually, he is a member of my team. Khaled Al-Mandil. He is a fire commissioner for Red Sea Global, operational manager at Red Sea Global. Mark Finn, general manager at FEC, a global consulting company. Abdul Hadi Al-Garni, CEO of Crash Group. What is interesting about this team, I'm going to call them my team, my standards team, is that they not only understand deeply the codes and standards. What is really key with this group is that they understand the ecosystem of the codes and standards, how the codes and standards work together and work within the different roles. So with that, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to ask Mark to set the stage. So Mark, this is going to be a two-part question. If you can tell us a little bit about the regulations, fire, electric, and life safety regulations in the kingdom. That's number one. And number two, what challenges are you, from your experience, obviously, what challenges are you facing with the market moving so fast?
Okay. Thank you, Olga, and thank you for the invitation to NFPA and the colleagues beside me. My experience, I came to Saudi Arabia in 2010. So I've had a good, was it now, nearly 15 years working in this market as a fire consultant with FEC International. And prior to that, I was about 15 years in the Emirates working on the contracting side of the business. So I could say probably, the guts of 30 years I've been working with the NFPA codes and standards. So it's probably the only set of standards I've worked with, really. In Saudi Arabia, we've 2 sets of regulations we work under. We work with the HCR staff directives, the industrial, light industrial, and some selected non-industrial sectors. And we work with the civil defense regulations. And both of those regulatory requirements start with the Saudi building codes, effectively, for the built environment. And they all reference the NFPA codes and standards for the full life cycle of a project. So when we start a strategy, it's based on what are the requirements for the buildings based on the ICC. And that could be performance-based or it could be prescriptive-based. And then we would look at the NFPA codes and standards for the actual implementation of these standards. That then follows through from when the strategy is finished to the installation. Shop drawings, NFPA will tell you how to use the codes and standards, so how to design a particular building. Sprinkler systems, NFPA 30, 20 for the pumps, 22 for the water supplies. And then when you move towards the end of the project, you've got the testing and commissioning. Again, we've got the NFPA standards that govern most of those requirements. And then importantly, once the building is handed over, again, the code requirements, both the codes, the HCS and the Saudi building codes, or civil defense codes, require that the facility owner maintains compliance for the life cycle of a project. And we find, again, that loops back to Saudi building codes, and the NFPA codes and standards. NFPA 13 will dictate your how you will have compliance or maintain compliance on the systems. And then NFPA 25, of course. So it's a full life cycle experience with the NFPA. They're very well aligned, in my experience.
So perfect. Thank you, Mark. On the challenges, I mean, there is a saying that it's an alphabet soup when you talk about NFPA and some other UL, right? It's not an alphabet, but it's a number soup. So I know this is a little bit of a twist, but this is like a third part of the question for you. How, do you find that challenging as you have new clients, right? Navigating, how do they navigate this landscape of codes and standards? How challenging is it for you as a consultant? Yeah. Probably doing some training, like on the spot.
I mean, challenges. The construction industry is full of challenges. It's not an easy industry. We particularly from a life safety strategy point of view, we don't have as a consultancy, you don't really have a problem understanding codes and standards. Once it starts to move into the construction stage, that's where the challenges really start. The education over the last 10 years, improvements have been massive. NFPA have run a lot of courses, been educating for over 10 years in the kingdom that I'm aware of. And the Saudi Engineering Council have also been running courses on the code. So that has really improved. But there are still challenges. The challenges are you've got the theoretical side covered with NFPA. We find it's the practical side and the implementation of the codes are a challenge. We try and address that through knowledge sharing. I heard a lot of the presentations earlier on, we're talking about knowledge sharing, and that's key to a lot of the work we do with our clients to help navigate the practical side of the codes to make it understandable and practical.
No, thank you so much, Mark. I wanted to elaborate. Well, first of all, thank you for the background. That's great. When we talk about that knowledge transfer in the morning, I really wanted to ask a question, but I refrained myself, from it because I think there is a knowledge transfer, but another important aspect is mentoring. And some of us that have been on this for a very, very long time, right? We need to ensure that a lot of this knowledge that we have, we transfer it in a way that even if it's individual, there's that multiplying effect. So thank you so much, Mark. I'm going to now, I got to get my cards because if not, I just talk about all these great things that happened this morning. So I'm going to go to Khalid. Building on Mark's response, where do you see the most significant gaps between the pace of development in the kingdom and the pace of regulations right now, Khaled?
Okay, thank you, Olga, and good afternoon, everyone. That's a great question, honestly, because I don't want to say we face it on a daily basis in Red Sea Global, but at least on a regular basis. You know, speaking of 2030 vision and the fast-paced developments of the various projects that we are having, and you come one day to the project, next day you find a totally new building coming up out of nowhere. So speaking of that, and adding to that is the unique structures and designs that we are having on those projects, whether on the mainland or on islands. It gives us a great challenge, which gives flavors to the work that we are doing. So speaking of the challenges between the fast pace of developments and the various projects and the pace maybe of standard developments, and then maybe I can relate to my colleague presentation, just the past one, talking about EVs and the standard of EVs when it comes to NFPA and others. So for example, I can just relate directly as we're having solar panels and we are using EV electric vehicles and you name it, electric scooters being utilized by the company employees back at the project site. So looking at the standards and how we can make sure that those EVs are being utilized safely, stored safely, whether they store it in their living accommodations or whether they are being utilized on various projects. Having a huge battery banks for those solar panels that will feed into the islands and mainland. So it causes us a big challenge, which is a great thing صراحة to think of and even to motivate us to do our work. So this is just one example. Another example that I can think of between the challenge between the fast pace of the projects and developments is, for example, speaking of emergency response, is the firefighting equipment and firefighting gears. And for example, we are having EV fire trucks in some of the islands that we cannot use a normal diesel engine fire trucks, and we need to utilize EV fire trucks or electric powered fire trucks that can satisfy the needs and the challenges of how long it can last during emergencies. What about the performance of those EV fire trucks? Can they be compared to the normal ones? Are there standards for those EV fire trucks? So all those are just examples that we are facing on a regular basis in our projects.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, if I could summarize a little bit, really change speed is the new normal. So keeping up is not enough. We need to stay ahead without compromising safety. So thank you so much, Khaled. Let me now bring Sahi into the conversation. Adopting a code and reference standards that accompany the code is just the first step. But implementing and enforcing, just, like we heard Khaled, can be a stronger and a larger challenge. From your perspective, what barriers have you seen and what opportunities are emerging to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, thank you, Olga. Good afternoon, everyone. As you said, adopting codes and standards is just the crucial first step. But the real challenge lies, again, as you said, with the proper implementation and the enforcement of these codes and standards. I can highlight on some of these challenges. I can say that raising awareness and understanding the NFPA codes and standards among stakeholders, whether they are consultants, contractors, facility managers, or even end users, is really challenging, and it's really important. The other challenge I would like to highlight is the robust capacity and competent development, as it is very important to have the right skilled workforce in the market and ensure they have the required and necessary knowledge and the skills to have an effective fire protection. So having said that, I believe that investment in a skilled workforce and raising awareness through education and advocacy really pave the way for a proper NFPA life and fire safety ecosystem. Another thing I want to highlight that when we speak about standards, so the NFPA standards is not just a paper. These standards and codes are developed through a rigorous consensus-based process where we convene experts from all over the world to develop these standards. And just to conclude to your question, Olga, I think that if we foster the right collaboration and we have the right talent, I think this is a great opportunity to overcome these challenges, to ensure that the NFPA codes and the standards can really translate into a more resilient built environment, supporting the kingdom and the Vision 2030.
No, you're right, Sahi. One of our challenges is, how do we articulate, how do we, promote that codes and standards are not just a complicated checklist, right? So they're an empowerment tool, right? So I think that concept, it kind of like summarizes how can we help the kingdom. So I'm gonna switch gears a tiny bit, and I'm gonna go to Abdul Hadi, because Sahi, you mentioned training as a key component. Actually, all of you have mentioned training. From your perspective, how important is workforce training and certification in building the kingdom's fire, electrical, and life safety capacity?
Assalamu alaikum, jazakumullah bil khair. Good afternoon for everybody here. I would like to say thank you for all who attendance here, or anyone in each part of the world who start or who to efforts from science, research, laboratories, anyone try to make any efforts to try to support us or to protect human life. Thank you for all. There is no doubt the training center, one of the main important aspects to protect and to complete the cycle of training. I know the cycle of the fire protection from six things, I think: the life safety, mechanical system, electric system. All this without training, without maintenance, there is no compliance. So the training, insurance, the training directly will contribute to reduce the risks, to enhancing compliance, and to save the life. The NFPA role, critical roles by build the codes, the standard, by provide the training to try to support us how to protect us from the fire. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdul Hadi. I want to go back to Khalid. Earlier, you spoke about the speed of change, which is really putting pressure on the regulations, right? On the regulatory systems that are evolving, not probably as as fast as we would like. So there is pressure on those. Abdul Hadi spoke about the training need and educating the workforce. In your experience leading major projects, how can local authorities and developers collaborate to ensure code compliance throughout the life cycle of a building?
Okay, thank you, Olga. Another great question. So I think the easy answer is one word, is probably communication. I think communication, early stages from any projects, from the master plan with the authority having jurisdiction, the FLS consultant on board, the client themselves, is a key factor for the success to carry on throughout the phases of the project cycle. So currently in Red Sea Global, actually we get involved with the authority having jurisdiction, ourselves, and the project design, the design team, the architects, all get together from the master plan stage of the project, even from the pre-concept stage, and we carry on making sure that the standards that will be applicable to the project is clear to everyone. Even sometimes the latest version, you have to specify which version that you'll be applying, because sometimes from one version to another makes a difference. So I think the key factor for success and to ensure the smooth running of any project is the communication from early stages and throughout the phases of the project. So we get involved from the pre-concept stage, the master plan stage, the detailed design stage, the shop drawing stage, the final commissioning, and even after running through the operation phase. So I think this is a key factor for success of the project.
No, excellent. This is a great segue into what we call the fire and life safety ecosystem. That is a framework that identifies 8 components that must work together in order to minimize risk, right? And hopefully, no loss of life. Why I am mentioning the fire and life safety ecosystem and these 8 components is because everybody has a role within one of those elements. And those elements must work together, just like Khaled said, communication, we must work together, as well. So this actually takes me into Sahi's next question on inspections. What roles does inspections and third-party certifications and other elements, as we talked about the ecosystem, play in making codes and standards are more just on the paper?
Yeah, so to answer this question, I really want to speak based on my current role and my previous role at UL. And again, I think this is really a critical question. And the reason behind that is that when we speak about inspections and third-party certifications, this is really critical to ensure that the NFPA codes and standards are not just a paper. We have to ensure that these are properly implemented and enforced in the projects and so on. When it comes to NFPA, as I said, those standards are consensus-based standards and are developed mostly to reduce the risk, to protect our lives and the properties. Without proper implementation of the codes and the standards, we will not be safe. And this is where the inspections and third-party inspections come into the picture. When we speak about, let's say, inspections, it is more of verifying compliance. For example, when we have a building, we want to ensure that the building is in compliance, the product is in compliance, the system is in compliance. And we want to do that based on the minimum as set per the code. On the other hand, also, it is really important to do the inspections from a professional background because we want to check non-compliance. Also, we want to identify hazards or probably provide corrective actions. However, when we speak about the third-party inspection, third-party certifications, it is an additional layer of assurance. Whether that certification is meant for the product, systems, or even for professionals, like whether it's for something or for someone, we need to demonstrate competency. For example, we can say that the product, for example, is certified to NFPA 72, for example, if it's a fire alarm system. And at the same time, we can say when it comes to professionals that this professional holds the Certified Fire Protection Certificate, which is the CFPS. So yeah, as I said, so this is about the certification. So in summary, we can say that inspections and certificates are really meant to build the trust for the product systems that are meant to be protected.
Thank you, Sahi. And I think if we look at NFPA codes and standards, other codes and standards on the ecosystem of safety, you can have the best codes and code or standard if you don't have enforcement training in particular, right? It's going to fail, right? It's just going to be like the Encyclopedia Britannica, way back in a mahogany desk, right? So thank you so much, Sahi, for highlighting this. Now, let's move into a practical example, and I'm going to move to Mark. FEC provides support to key industries in the kingdom that are responsible for critical infrastructure. Can you share an example of a necessary modification and how it stayed true to the core of the NFPA standard? Easy question, really easy.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, in the industrial sectors, we have the HCS SAF directives, and I'm taking an example. Water supply is one obvious example. In the NFPA codes, the standards, you're typically about a 2-hour water supply for most hazards. It's been adopted on the SAF directives for industrial facilities for up to a 6-hour water supply. And that kind of reflects the hazards and risks unique to that particular industry. So yes, I think the NFPA, when I say 2-hour water supply, it's a minimum 2-hour water supply. You need to be also looking at what are the actual requirements. Other examples, top of my head, it's gone. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, but it's temperature is another one. Temperature, we've got a very hot environment in the Middle East, and I think they specify a 65-degree temperature specifically for outdoor environments. I don't think the NFPA would be typically UL list to be kind of 50, 55 degrees on the temperature. So there's always adaptations for the local environment.
So would you say NFPA develops model codes and standards, for that, for that very reason, right? It also happens in the US, right? So it's not unfamiliar. So we need professionals, right, that can make, those judgments.
It's very important. Yeah, you've got to, back to the early days in my career, we've stuck with the minimum requirements of NFPA on a particular facility, put in, I think it was signage or lamps for a CO2 system, and came back about 2 years later. The authority having jurisdiction at the time wanted to have a higher specification. As a young engineer, we said, no, that meets the codes and standards. 2 years later, I was back in a different role. And the first thing he brought me was around the power plant and grabbed me and brought me to the site. So see all that? It's all white. It's been disappeared by the UV radiation. So you have to adapt them for the local standards. It's very important.
In that example, like when you're working with SAIS, HCIS, they're both the regulator and the enforcer. Now I'm going to go to Khaled, and because you have two hats, right? So how do you deal with non-regular situations?
Okay, so when we faced a lot of these, issues or cases when we have maybe not complying with the code or irregular structures or what have you. So I think we have two ways to go. Either we go with the performance-based design to convince the authority having jurisdiction, or the other way is we make sure that we meet the intent of the code, which I always refer to. So we're making sure that the life safety is always being there, and we're always going to have life safety as the top priority for when we do the structure. So we have a lot of cases that some irregularity in structures, we cannot meet the code for one reason or another. So we have to convince the authority having jurisdiction that we take several mitigation steps or mitigation, systems. Sometimes we go above the code in different way. We use different systems. We sometimes go to a human factor just to make sure that the intent of the code and the life safety will for sure be guaranteed. And then we can convince the authority having jurisdiction to proceed with the design.
No, this is key. This is the collaboration that you were just talking about, right? I mean, the authority having jurisdiction needs to be brought in, and the authority having jurisdiction also needs to be trained, to keep updated, to be able to have this kinds of conversations. So thank you so much, Mark and Khaled. So we have talked about compliance, we've talked about regulations, you have talked about training. But is this enough? So you know who I'm going to be asking the question, without a strong culture behind it. Abdul Hadi, What is one easy cultural shift that will help us make a significant impact in fire safety education in Saudi Arabia?
Thank you so much. This is a good question. I think the big issue in the Middle East, how to change the culture to compliance with code, because we have some culture and behavior. I think change different, not like, for example, American culture, for example, incense or al-bukhur. Because if we find any incense in any building, immediately the alarm system will shut down to don't sense the bukhur. I have to start from change the culture from primary school to high school to university. In this time, I think it's better if you start change the culture and the behavior from not from executive staff. I think from decision maker to change the culture by build the policies, the regulation in company. I want to say something before you finish. If you let me just to ask us question. What would happen without NFPA and the standard fire safety codes? Without NFPA codes, what will happen in the world? I have some points, but I think a lot of points without NFPA. لا شك إن NFPA built many codes. You have to follow it. The effect in the world without NFPA, many times I here write 5 things. One of them, lack of standardization and safety inconsistency. The second, increased fire incident and casualties. Delay emergency response and lower professional competency. Barriers and to international collaboration to compliance, significant economic losses. NFPA standard, not luxury, just luxury, not luxury. It's a critical necessity for saving lives, protecting assets, and ensuring long-term resilience.
I just want to close, by this culture piece that Abdul Hadi spoke about, and it was also spoken about this morning. If we want to build a culture of safety in the kingdom, we have to make this part of our plan. We can't just start the codes and standards and go into all of the technical aspects without thinking about, okay, we're doing all of this for who, right? So build safety as part of your plan. Public education, we have a gate that talked about awareness, great campaign, right? We're always going to have accidents, right? So let's have the public educated. So that's one. The second one is codes and standards don't act alone. They're really part of a larger system, and you are part of that system, as well. Thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you, as well for paying attention to us. And thank you to Fire Middle East for also helping us build this culture of safety through these conferences, events, and the magazine here in the Kingdom. Thank you very much.